Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
But if you insist on going in, you'll definitely feel wronged. If Doctor he says anything unpleasant, don't take it to heart. Dr. Jiang said worriedly after she finished speaking. She did not forget to look around carefully and whispered into her ear, the last time Doctor he went to the United States, he actually made a special trip to visit his idol, the famous cardiothoracic surgeon, Helen. In the end, he returned disappointed. He's already in a bad mood. I heard that he completely fell out with President Xi yesterday. Now, everyone is afraid of being swept away by the storm. He nodded and said casually, "Is that so? But he might want to see me." Let me in." Sui winked at him mischievously. Dr. Jiang stared at him until his eyes went blank. He was still giggling foolishly until he pushed the door open and entered. Aya was blocked outside the door, so she simply found a corner to make a phone call. "Hello, President? This is Aya. I have a situation to report." Madam actually winked at a male doctor just now. Okay, what? You want me to stop her? But she has already entered." The conference room's door was suddenly pushed open from the outside, stopping the heated discussion. In an instant, everyone turned their gazes over. Suhihi. Many of Fifin's medical team were either from a university or had studied at a university. Almost everyone knew the most legendary campus belle in the history of a university. Everyone was familiar with her. The greatest and most legendary thing Suhihi had done in his life was that she once kicked Chi-Che away. Chi-Che, a godlike man. Oh my God, how dare she come here? Fifin sat at the head of the table and said with a cold face, "Why are you here? You're not welcome here. I want to join your medical team." Fifin sneered disdainfully. "With just you? Do you think all men will be fooled by you like idiots?" Suhihi frowned slightly, and his chest tightened with sadness. "It's not like that. I'll join based on my strength." "Strength? She'll have strength too?" A woman in her 30s mocked sharply. Her words immediately caused the crowd to burst into laughter. "Stop daydreaming. Even if Senior agrees, we won't agree." Someone laughed in a foul tone. Bang! The door was kicked open from the outside. Chi-Che stood at the door in a straight suit like a demon. Behind him were many hospital executives. He was trembling and occasionally wiping the cold sweat off his forehead. Just now at the board meeting on the top floor, young Master Chi had received a call and actually ran down in fright, scaring the others into following him. "Young Master Chi? Senior? President? Why are you here?" Everyone in the meeting room looked at him in shock. They didn't expect that the person who had suddenly barged in would be Chi-Che. Recently, news of Suhihi's mistress had been everywhere. Everyone had even forgotten that Chi-Che was already the chairman of the first hospital. "Please address me as chairman." His icy, cold voice carried a coldness that kept others at 1,000 miles away. Everyone looked at each other awkwardly. They really didn't expect Chi-Che to completely disregard the feelings of his former schoolmates and make everyone embarrassed. Fifin stood up from his chair with a livid expression and looked at him hesitantly. Facing Chi-Che's cold and emotionless gaze, he sat down in defeat and didn't say a word. Tang Yi was right. It was really over between the two of them. The man who was like a star surrounding the moon walked over to Suhihi with a straight face and long legs. "Is there anything I can't give you that requires you to secretly come here behind my back?" There was a situation everyone present sucked in a breath of cold air. The press conference was right in front of their eyes, but young Master Chi was really going back to his old ways. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. He crawled away and continued to write. Sui's face was flushed red from embarrassment. His hands twisted the hem of his clothes as he said in slight annoyance, "Che, stop fooling around. I have serious matters to attend to." "Serious matters?" Chi-Che sneered on the spot. He lowered his head and whispered in her ear with a devilish charm, "If you become my Chi-Che's lover, what else can you not get?" After saying that, he looked down at everyone arrogantly. "They have to treat you with utmost respect. You can do whatever you want in the entire city." As long as it was what she wanted, he would do whatever it took to bring it to her in exchange for her sincere words. He frowned in disgust and was so angry that his entire body couldn't stop trembling. She would never be a lover. She would never walk the same path as her mother. Stop daydreaming. It's over between us. It was time to make a decision. Aceh couldn't forgive her at all. Moreover, the distance between them wasn't just thousands of mountains and rivers, life and death, heaven and earth, clouds and mud, and a fiancé. Perhaps there was already a small life in Fu Mingyao's stomach. Her mother's stubbornness had made her suffer for her entire life. Why did she have to repeat the same mistake? Chiche pulled her into his embrace and pressed her against his chest forcefully. Countless gasps could be heard from all around him. The man's elegant lips were pursed into a straight line, and his dual-colored eyes were filled with a heart-palpitating ruthlessness. Don't even think about it. I've said it unless I die. Hee. How can you be so heartless? Just what do you want to do to change your mind? Is Chiche really worthless in your heart? That's enough. Fifin suddenly slammed his palm on the table, and with a bang, everyone instantly sobered up. Just where are you putting Meng Yao? Fifin roared indignantly, not forgetting to glare hatefully at Su He. The reproach and disdain in his eyes were so intense that it made people want to find a hole to hide in. Su He was both embarrassed and angry. Subconsciously, he buried his face in Chiche's embrace and simply didn't look at everyone's eyes. She didn't care about what others thought of her, but she would also feel heartache. Ever since she was young, she had long since become numb to all kinds of abuse. However, what made her unable to bear was that the person who hated her the most was actually her former classmate, the senior she had always respected. Su He's unconscious reliance caused Chiche's lips to curl into an imperceptible smile. Towards Fifin's face-to-face criticism, he simply chose to ignore it. Whether it was winning or losing a face-to-face fight with Fifin, it would damage his identity. Since they had already fallen out, don't blame him for being ruthless. Let's go. Hugging He. Chiche's black eyes swept across everyone with a sharp gaze. His powerful aura was like a mountain-like blade pressing down on everyone, making them unable to breathe and their hearts palpitate. Fifin slumped onto his chair dejectedly. He knew that Chiche had always held a grudge and was best at settling scores after the autumn, especially towards his own opponents. He actually didn't say anything just now. Did it mean that they couldn't even be considered friends and could only be considered opponents? Wait, a voice with a foreign accent suddenly shouted. Chiche frowned slightly and turned his head in displeasure. Do you think I'm easy to bully? The underlying meaning of the warning was quite obvious. The man who spoke out to stop him was 1.8 meters tall. He had bronze-colored skin, a neat crew cut, and a white lab coat. He was very handsome and stylish. At this moment, he was standing beside Fifin. From the looks of it, his position in the entire medical team was very high. Dr. Doug, someone who knew him, couldn't help but ask in puzzlement. He couldn't understand why a famous clinical anesthesiologist, a foreigner, would have bad luck with Chiche in his head. The first post was presented. Please move your little hands and give me a collection and recommendation. This is my motivation for writing. Doug stepped forward with an excited expression. Ignoring Chiche's cold and dark expression, he pulled He out and hugged him like a bear. Duju, who had been standing silently behind Chiche, could not bear to look at him and close his eyes. Another idiot was going to die a horrible death. Oh my God, is Helen really you? It's unbelievable. I've been staring at you. I can't believe it's real. Doug was so excited that he began to speak incoherently in broken Chinese. He hugged He and grinned, giggling foolishly and chattering nonstop. Before I came to China, I asked Professor Angus for your address in China. He was so ungrateful that he didn't tell me. Su He was speechless. He was too careless just now. He didn't even realize that Doug was there. You guys know each other? Fifin asked in confusion. Of course. Doug stared at the crowd in disbelief and asked in surprise. We're schoolmates. Don't you guys know? Oh. Fifin felt a little disappointed. He didn't expect that the vixen he despised the most would actually be schoolmates with Doug. Hey, you told me last time that the doctor you admire the most is Helen. Why don't you know her in front of you? What did you say? Fifin's reaction was terrifying. He stared at Doug in shock. She is Helen? Don't joke around. Doug was obviously unhappy with Fifin's doubt. Oh. You know that I never joke around. I would never make a mistake about Professor Angus's last disciple, the world-famous cardiothoracic surgeon. At the same time, he didn't forget to lift He's slender hands with pride. He said proudly, "These hands are the legendary angel's hands, the most expensive hands in the world." Helen, the world-famous cardiothoracic surgeon Helen, the genius Dr. Helen. Everyone present was a doctor, and probably everyone knew about the world-famous experts. How could the unattainable genius doctor be a notorious vixen immediately? Countless people were shocked. Shock and astonishment could no longer be used to describe their feelings at this moment, and perhaps there was also great regret and worry. With Helen's status in the hospital world, a single sentence could make them completely disappear from this industry. Fifin's expression was unsightly. His heart felt as if it had broken a bottle of mixed emotions. The corners of his mouth kept trembling, but he couldn't say a word. He had never thought that he would actually be the most superficial person. His eyes had really been eaten by a dog. He had always been conceited, but he wasn't even comparable to the most cynical Tang Yi. Chi-Chi's sword-like brows furrowed solemnly. He had never cared about his status and status. If she were Helen, things would be a little troublesome. He would rather she was just he. "Helen, we haven't seen each other for a long time. We must have a drink." Doug was clearly too excited to notice the man who had been eyeing him like a tiger. "Let go." A cold voice suddenly sounded, scaring Doug so much that he subconsciously let go. Then, he was blocked by someone. "Who are you? You're so rude." "Do you treat him to a cup of tea later and teach him what manners are?" Chi-Chi turned around and swept a cold glance at him. His forceful intimidation made people unconsciously take a step back. He turned around and grabbed Soo-hee, ordering him sternly, "Follow me." "I'm not going. Let go." No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't break free from the restraints on her left and right. She vaguely knew that Ah-che was angry, very angry. "Ah-che, can you let go?" Being dragged out of the meeting room, she had no choice but to beg for mercy in a soft voice. "My hand hurts. Can you let go?" So he was forced into the passenger seat by Chi-Che and drove to a university at 180 miles per hour. He was so frightened that his face turned pale. Even when the car stopped at the entrance of a university, he still felt extremely uncomfortable. "What's wrong?" Chi-Che personally helped her out of the car. Chi-Che's expression was puzzled. "Am I driving too fast?" "No." He shook his head with a bitter smile. Speed was one thing, but it was undeniable that her body was getting worse. Chi-Che looked at his watch and said somewhat unnaturally, "It's getting late. Let's go have a meal first." "Okay." Soo-hee silently followed behind Chi-Che. The two of them walked in the familiar campus. Thinking of the past, the atmosphere between them was so awkward that it was suffocating. Looking at the spirited, smiling faces that brushed past her, he felt his eyes sour and uncomfortable. "Ah-che." Chi-Che raised his brows slightly and turned his head to look at her, waiting for her to continue. "Ah." He hesitated and said hesitantly, "I'm going to Beijing in a few days." After saying that, she couldn't help but look down on herself. She clearly didn't want to say this. She clearly wanted to ask him if he could forgive her. "Soo-hee, you're really useless. I'll go back in a few days, too." "Is that so?" The atmosphere was a little silent. She was most afraid of Chi-Che like this, causing her to panic for no reason. "Ah-che, will you forgive me in the future?" She didn't dare to imagine how much Ah-che would hate her after she died. Perhaps he wouldn't even attend the funeral? Then we'll talk about it in the future. He felt a wave of disappointment in her heart. She couldn't help but mutter to herself, "Can I wait until the future? Probably not anymore." At the end of the small path was an exquisite small villa. It wasn't very luxurious, but the environment was beautiful. Soo-hee suddenly recalled that this was the place where the president of university lived. He was named the most intelligent and beautiful female president of the top 10 universities. After passing by the security room at the main entrance, the middle-aged security guard politely greeted Chi-Che. He couldn't help but take a few more glances at Soo-hee. She curiously looked at Chi-Che, not understanding why he brought her here. It wasn't until she saw the intelligent and graceful woman in front of her Su He, that he suddenly realized that President He and He Fifan were actually quite similar. When she thought of the fact that the two of them had the same surname, it wasn't difficult to guess the result. He Jihua personally welcomed the two of them into the house and poured them some tea. After that, he looked askance at Chi Che and said, "Ah Che, you remembered to come to my place today? You're not here at this time to freeload, are you?" Chi Che nodded seriously, making He Jihua laugh out loud. He couldn't help but tease, "It's such an honor to have the great President Chi here." Chi Che leisurely leaned against the sofa, his ink-black eyes glowing, and his thin lips slightly raised. "It's not too late for you to say this when my sister comes." Chi Ching. He Jihua hurriedly put on an expression that was respectful but not sensitive. "It's better if she doesn't come. In the 49 cities, she's the little tyrant. She's even more awesome than the Crown Prince's gang." Chi Che chuckled at her words. And he's right. If even Su Guining gave in her, she would go to heaven. He Jihua glanced at Su Hehe, who had been silent beside Chi Che. "This must be Su Hehe, right? As a former student of a university, I've always regretted not being able to meet you in person." Su Hehe didn't expect President He to say this. He quickly raised his head and said respectfully, "Hello, President. It's my honor to meet the president I admire." As long as one had studied at a university, there was no one who didn't admire President He. It was said that it was Principal He who single-handedly pushed a university into the ranks of the top-tier famous universities. He did not expect the iron-fisted Principal He to be so approachable. He Jihua's expression suddenly changed when he saw Su Hehe's face. He pointed at her in shock. "Chinga?" Sui was shocked. She knew her mother, that's right. They were both from influential families. Perhaps they had known each other since they were young. Thinking about his mother's current situation and Principal He's identity, he couldn't help but feel sorry for his mother. He Jihua grabbed He's hand and asked aggressively, "What's your relationship with Su Chinga?" Sui was a loss. Who's Su Chinga? His mother had long been kicked out of the Su family. She would never admit that her surname was Su. This surname was beyond their reach. He Jihua sat down dejectedly and shook his head self-deprecatingly. The person who's been missing for 20 years is long dead. His mumbling finally became inaudible. Su He couldn't help but stare at her curiously. He had never heard his mother mention it before, so he didn't know how her relationship with his mother was. It would be great if she was willing to help his mother. He Jihua sighed, turned around, and said seriously to Chi Che, "Ah Che, I heard that you've completely fallen out with Fifan this time. Is there no room for maneuver?" Chi Che nodded, and his tone carried a hint of coldness. "You know my temper." What he meant was that there was no need to say anything else. Fifan has indeed gone overboard this time. Even as an aunt, I can't say anything. However, I still want to advise you. After all, I've been through this before. If I hadn't fallen out with Chingo, perhaps she wouldn't have gotten to this point and made me regret it for 20 years. And he was a little abnormal today. She was too emotional. Chi Che's expression turned even colder. The reason he brought He here wasn't to listen to these things. "And is the food ready?" He Jihua saw that it was already past lunchtime, so he hurriedly asked the nanny to start the meal. In the dining room, Chi Che and Su He sat opposite each other. He didn't expect Chi Che to get up and sit directly next to He without saying a word. He Jihua, who was sitting in the main seat, was dumbstruck. This was actually something the cold-hearted Ah Che would do. Even Chi Ching probably wouldn't believe it, right? Then, what surprised her even more was that Chi Che kept picking up food for He the entire time. The meat and vegetables were matched meticulously, and his movements were familiar. It was as if he had done it countless times. With just a look from her, Chi Che could immediately understand. He Jihua was so shocked that he almost dropped his chopsticks on the ground. He Jihua suddenly understood the purpose of Ah Che bringing Su He here. He wanted to use her mouth to tell the Chi family far away in Beijing that it was best not to act rashly and hurt Su He. Once Su He walked in with her, even if the Fu family took action, they would have to think twice. Ah Che really put in a lot of effort for Su He. Thinking of this, He Jihua's smile became even kinder. He warmly beckoned Su He and didn't forget to remind her to come over often when she was free. Since Ache had the heart, she had to give him face. When they came out of university, Hao Yinfei and Du Ju were already waiting at the gates side by side. Behind them, a limited edition Jaguar attracted the passing juniors and juniors to whisper to each other from time to time, casting curious gazes of worship. When they saw Chi Che and Du Ju, they hurriedly opened the car door and said anxiously, "There's an urgent matter in Beijing that needs you to go back immediately." Only then did Chi Che take out his phone and see that there were actually dozens of missed calls. He had turned his phone silent just now, so he didn't pay attention. "President, you go back first. I will definitely send He home safely." Hao Yinfei hurriedly patted her chest to guarantee when she received Chi Che's worried gaze. "I have a place to stay," He hurriedly said. She didn't expect Chi Che to actually cast her an ice-cold gaze. "If you don't want to be too in the limelight, then wait for me at home obediently." After he said that, he closed the car door and the sports car with superior performance whizzed away, leaving the two women staring blankly at each other. Hao Yinfei couldn't help but burst out laughing. She said to Su He in a familiar manner, "He, you don't know how to hide your emotions at all. You're clearly angry at me, but you've always wanted to pretend that you're not angry, yet your disguise has been unsuccessful." Hao Yinfei held He's hand. She smiled bitterly and said, "I did make that call on purpose. I really like to see Fu Mingyao suffer, and I also want to see how much Chi Che loves you. I'm sorry for being selfish and not considering your feelings." Hearing this, Su He smiled from the bottom of his heart. That moment was so brilliant that it made people unable to open their eyes. As long as Fei Fei didn't plot against her with Fu Mingyao and Butler Bai, she didn't care about anything else. Moreover, Fei Fei had always been like this. From the last Fu Mingyao's birthday party to this one, she had to thank her. If Fei Fei didn't call her and let her witness everything, perhaps she wouldn't be able to make up her mind. "Fei Fei, I don't blame you." Hearing her words, Hao Yinfei almost laughed with her hands on her waist. She said arrogantly, "At least you know what's good for you." The estrangement disappeared, and the heartless best friend from before returned. Suhi was also very happy. Fortunately, there was Fei Fei, her only friend. On the highway to the airport, Jaguar's speed was pushed to the limit. Chi Che's slender fingers holding the phone were faintly white, and his brows were almost furrowed into a small mountain. Chi Ching's hoarse voice came from the phone, and it almost couldn't help but tremble. "Ache, the hospital is currently arranging an operation for grandfather. I don't know if grandfather will be able to survive this time." Chi Che closed his eyes tiredly. This was already the second time his grandfather had been hospitalized due to a serious myocardial infarction. Old and frail, coupled with the danger of a second operation, the risks were truly too great. It was so great that the Chi family couldn't bear it. "Ache, come back quickly. Grandfather dotes on you the most. Even if he doesn't say it, he's actually been thinking of you for a long time. Although he has never liked Fu Mengyao's identity, he has already agreed to let you two get married this time and bring Fu Mengyao along. Send someone to pick me up at the airport in an hour." After hanging up the phone, Chi Che opened his eyes. His deep eyes were dark and bottomless. He made 3 consecutive calls and gave a concise account of the company's matters. The last call was to Fu Mengyao. It was the first time he contacted Fu Mengyao after the press conference. Fu Mengyao was so happy that she almost cried on the phone. Chi Che's indifference made her almost go crazy. If it wasn't for Butler Bai who insisted on stopping her, she would have rushed to Chi Che's side long ago. "Che, I miss you so much." Chi Che rubbed the space between his brows impatiently. He had gradually lost his patience with Fu Mengyao. The noble and elegant first daughter's actions were getting more and more clumsy. "Pack your things. I've already sent someone to pick you up and go back with me." "Okay. Thank you, Che." The hand holding the phone trembled slightly. Fu Mengyao's exquisite makeup was twitching from enduring the immense ecstasy. She wanted to laugh wildly, but was afraid of losing the face of the first daughter, so she didn't dare to show it. At this moment, she actually looked a little sinister. Chi Che had been gone for a month. When she heard from Fei Fei that even Fu Mengyao had gone with him, the world seemed to have quietened down all of a sudden. Even Yin Chuqing hadn't come looking for trouble with her. Was it because Ache wasn't around, or was it because of her identity as Dr. Helen? However, she had never cared about these things. Although this month's yearning had corroded her bones, she had obtained an unexpected peace. The life force that had been rapidly draining away had gradually stabilized under President Chang's hard work. Looking at his sparkling white hand with a hint of bruise, the smile on Su Hee's lips was bright and bitter. It was just like her current life. The morning glow had just bloomed, and the evening glow had already filled the sky. A voice told her that there was not much left in her life, but there were many things that she had yet to complete. President Chung, arrange an operation for your grandson, Chung. Finally, she made up her mind and did not hesitate anymore. This operation might be the last time in her life that she would personally complete it. After seeing President Chung leave with tears of joy, he took out her cell phone and dialed Professor Angus's number to explain her request in detail. So Sleepy Egu was typing furiously. Everyone, please give me some recommendations for my collection. Helen. The white-haired Professor Angus pondered for a long time before he said, Helen, you'll come, right? I am trying to think of a way to make your artificial heart have a high success rate. Teacher, have you forgotten how Alex died? She was rejected because of the later stage of the heart transplant. Su Hee's words got lower and lower as he went on. Her only good friend in the United States, the two of them who shared the same illness, had comforted each other through many sleepless nights. The girl with bright eyes listened curiously to the details of her and Che, sometimes crying and sometimes laughing. Alex, who finally received a heart transplant, did not make it through last winter. She closed her blue and bright eyes on the snowy morning. Alex's death made her completely determined to refuse the heart transplant and return to China. Instead of walking to the end of her life in the cold hospital bed, she would rather be unrestrained and act like a normal person. Professor Angus sighed. He knew better than anyone the stubbornness of his beloved disciple whom he had spent 5 years with. Back then, he had almost tied her up and did not stop her from returning to China. Now, what could a few words on the phone do? All right, I'll arrange for medical team Y to assist you as soon as possible. But you can't force yourself too much. Don't be too happy and sad. If that brat dares to provoke you, you must tell me. Su Hee could not help but laugh at Professor Angus's exhortation. He said in a light tone, Teacher, don't worry. I'm your student. Who dares to provoke me? That's good. The phone had just hung up when the door to the office was pushed open from the outside. He frowned slightly. 3 days ago, President Chung had personally arranged this office for her to study the specific plan for this surgery. He had clearly ordered that no one was allowed to disturb her. Meng raised its head and saw He Fifin's tired and pale handsome face. Doug stood to the side helplessly and shrugged at her. He raised his brows slightly and unconsciously revealed a smile. She knew that He Fifin had been avoiding her during this period of time. It was obvious that he was making a scene. Even the time for the medical team to go to Beijing had stopped because of this. It was better if he came to look for her. She didn't need to thicken her skin and come to him again. Looking at the calm Su He in front of him, the complicated look in He Fifin's eyes became even more intense. The person he admired the most was right in front of him. Not only did he not recognize him, but he also used words to humiliate him over and over again. The most ridiculous thing was He Fifin, not anyone else. Please take a seat. Su He stood up and waved casually. After sitting down silently, He Fifin said with a straight face, I heard that you're going to operate on Chung. He nodded slightly. What's the success rate? 65%. There had never been a 100% success rate in surgery in the world. Sometimes, we still have to look at the later stages of clinical treatment. When he mentioned his professional knowledge, he seemed to have suddenly changed into a different person, rigorous and rational. Looking at the computer simulation of the surgery process in front of him, Su Hee's thick eyelashes trembled slightly. He removed his eyes from the bridge of his nose and quickly said, I've already invited the Y medical team over, so I definitely won't delay your time in Beijing. Y medical team? He Fifin couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He had dreamed of joining the internationally renowned Y medical team even in his dreams, but he didn't expect that she would invite him over with just a phone call. It made sense. The Y medical team belonged to Professor Angus, and half of the reason for its existence was to serve Helen. Only a flawless combination could perfectly complete a high-difficulty surgery. His self-righteous pride was not worth mentioning in front of Sue Hee. Yes. Hee nodded nonchalantly. It was a lie to tell Hee that there was no barrier in her heart. She could not return kindness to resentment, so she could only deal with it calmly. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Hee turned around awkwardly and left in a hurry. He had just left when Jiang Yuan followed him in. Sue Hee could only smile helplessly. It seemed that it was impossible to be quiet today. Dr. Jiang, please take a seat. She had an endless amount of gratitude in her heart when she faced Jiang Yuan. There was more icing on the cake, but there was less help in the snow. Jiang Yuan was the ladder to her. Jiang Yuan lowered his head and looked embarrassed as he stammered for a long time before he said, "Helen, can you let us study while you perform the surgery for Chung Chung?" Ever since Hee's true identity was exposed, the entire medical world was shaken. There were too many people who came every day because of her reputation. Although they were all blocked by the hospital director, they couldn't stop the pleading from within the medical team. Moreover, it wasn't just the others. In fact, the person who wanted to learn the most was He. He just couldn't put down his face and could only force him to come. So that's your goal? He finally understood why He looked so awkward just now. No problem. The surgery is scheduled for 4 days later. You can watch it through a live video broadcast or through the transparent glass on the ceiling of the operating theater. She had encountered similar things many times in the United States, so it was nothing out of the ordinary. Hee, thank you so much. You're really kind. Jiang Yuan thanked her repeatedly in excitement. When he thought about how he had finally completed the task given to him by He's medical team, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. Then you go ahead and do your work. I won't disturb you anymore. Okay, take care. After sending Jiang Yuan and Sue Hee off, Sue Hee leaned back on the chair and took a nap. His condition was not good, and his body could no longer support the high-intensity work. With a kacha sound, the office door was opened again. The displeasure of being disturbed repeatedly made Hee open her eyes in anger. The man who appeared at the door was tall and slender. He wore a black cashmere coat, which made him look even more handsome and stylish. He had an imposing air about him. His pair of deep and cold eyes seemed to come from a snowy mountain. They were clear and handsome, not tainted by dust. He looked at him in a daze, almost forgetting to speak or even breathe. The tall and handsome man walked towards her and hugged her tightly across the office desk without any explanation. A slightly cold breath hit her face, and he suddenly came back to her senses. He must have just gotten off the plane. He, come back to my side. Let's forget about the past and start over, okay? His cold voice carried a trace of hoarse and heart-palpitating gentleness. This time, his grandfather's illness had made him realize the impermanence of life. Looking at his grandfather, who was as determined as a mountain, lying weakly on a hospital bed, he could not help but think about what he would do if he was also lying on the hospital bed. Perhaps he would go crazy. Life was impermanence. They had already wasted too much. He's eyes reddened. Sparkling tears dripped onto his shoulder. The fine and soft cashmere coat instantly absorbed all the tears, but he cried even harder. The grievance that had been stuck in her heart for many days finally found an outlet to vent. She finally waited for Che to turn around. Che. Her gentle voice was filled with incomparable dependence. Che closed his eyes in satisfaction. Hee. Duju stood outside the door and finally heaved a sigh of relief. He reached out and quietly closed the office door. Even he couldn't bear to watch the CEO suffer for the past month. He couldn't help but hug his arms as the cold autumn wind blew on him. The man beside him thoughtfully took off his coat and draped it over her shoulders, bringing with him a warm and familiar smell. Remember to wear more in the future. Che domineeringly pulled her into his embrace. He glanced at Aya, who was waiting in the parking lot, and reproached her for not taking good care of her. President, madam, Aya ran up to Chi-Che cheerfully and quickly corrected his reproach. President, Madam doesn't allow me to follow her every time. Even the hospital doesn't allow me to enter. She looked at the woman in her arms with a cold gaze. In an instant, the ice mountain melted, bringing with it a supreme, doting affection. Even Aya, who was at the side, was about to die of happiness when she saw it. He lowered his head bashfully and leaned lazily into his arms like a precious Persian cat. What do you want to eat tonight? Chi-Che asked in a low voice. Without waiting for Hee-Hee to answer, he pondered for a moment and said, Let's go to Caesar's imperial palace. Right, next time we're not allowed to go out to eat with any man, not even Tang-Yi, especially Doug. Sui pouted and glared at him. Who told you to lock Doug up last time? Do you know that he's most afraid of the dark? In the days when she had just returned to the hospital, every time Doug saw her, he would complain. He would not shed any tears or snot. He would directly call Chi-Che a devil. He probably did not want to see Che for the rest of his life. Chi-Che smiled shamelessly. It was because he knew that he was locked up. He was so angry that she was helpless, thinking that if she defended Che too much, she would only hit him harder. She hurriedly shut her mouth. The man's starry eyes narrowed with an imperceptible sense of satisfaction. He considerately opened the car door for her, left Aya and Duju behind, and personally drove to Caesar's palace. He finally realized that Che was really too narrow-minded. It was the same table as last time, the same dishes, and the same 4 bottles of President's love that stunned the waiters. He was clearly still angry at last time. The two of them sat side by side. Chi-Che indifferently said, Last time, I was kicked a lot by you. This time, it's better to sit together. Hee-Hee, who was drinking water, was so shocked that she spat out all the water in her mouth. She was dumbstruck, embarrassed, and covered her face. She wished she could find a hole to hide in on the spot. How embarrassing, how could he remember it after such a long time? Chi-Che shrugged and teased. It's indeed wise not to sit across from you. As he spoke, he carefully pushed the cut steak in front of her. His slender fingers elegantly held a knife and fork as he fed her with familiarity. It was as if time had returned to 5 years ago. At that time, Che had personally fed her like this. He was happily eating. He had done this countless times, but at this moment, he was not at all unfamiliar with it. It was as if 5 years had never passed, and they were still a couple in love. Sipping the red wine in his glass, Chi-Che fed the rich French-baked lobster to her mouth. Ugh! The moment the seafood entered his nose, Su-Hee's stomach immediately turned upside down. He covered his mouth and hurriedly rushed to the bathroom. Chi-Che put down his knife and fork and frowned slightly. He looked thoughtfully at Hee-Hee's back, and a strange feeling rose in his heart. The ringtone of his phone interrupted his thoughts, and impatiently prepared to turn it off. Chi-Ching's profile picture on the screen made him helplessly press the answer button. Che, where did you go? Chi-Ching asked unhappily. This afternoon, when she couldn't find old Master Che, she started to throw a tantrum. No one could persuade her, so she had to call someone. I'm back in City, Ye. You're not going to see Su-Hee-Hee, are you? The sharp Chi-Ching asked in displeasure. Whenever she thought about how Che had been living these 5 years, she would be filled with anger. She had seen many ruthless women, but this was the first time she had experienced someone as ruthless as Su-Hee-Hee. Yes, Chi-Che simply admitted it. The annoyance in his heart grew. On the other end of the phone, Chi-Ching sighed heavily. She knew her precious little brother's temper the best. She never allowed anyone to interfere with his freedom. From the time he rejected the family's arrangement to the time he suddenly got engaged to Fu Mingyao, he was the one who had successfully argued over every matter. It was likely that Su-Hee-Hee's appearance this time would be another bloody storm. I'll send a special plane to pick you up. I'll be back tonight. I'll bring Hee-Hee back with me. Looking up in the direction of the washroom, Chi-Che secretly made an important decision. Hearing this, Chi-Ching couldn't help but raise his voice and said with slight anger, Che, what exactly do you want to do at this time? Marry Sui home? Stop dreaming. With Sui's background and experience, he won't be able to enter the Chi family in this lifetime. Sister, Love doesn't talk about background and experience. You'll understand my decision one day. Chi-Che's voice was low. The relationship between the siblings had been good since they were young. Chi-Che had always known that Chi-Ching did not believe in love and thought that she did not need love. However, she did not know that she did not need love because it had not appeared yet. Once it appeared, she could not extricate herself. Sister, love is a poison. I am too deeply poisoned to be saved. He had used many methods over the past 5 years. He could not forget he. She would only become clearer in his mind. The pain of having his heart ripped out made him wish he was dead. He had been living like a walking corpse until he appeared. Only then did he realize that he had always loved and needed her. Chi-Ching's fingers that were holding onto the phone turned slightly white. He suddenly felt flustered. It turned out that his beloved younger brother had been living in more pain than he had imagined all these years, and she couldn't do anything about it. Since he couldn't persuade Ache to turn back, and he couldn't even persuade the family to nod their heads, she, as the successor of the family, was really a little unqualified. I won't interfere with you, but Meng Yao is pregnant. He silently hung up the phone and looked at the brightly lit ward across from him. For a moment, Chi-Ching didn't know how to go in and explain. Meng Yao is pregnant? Chi-Che, who was holding the phone, was stunned. For a moment, his mind went completely blank. After recovering in an instant, an indescribable feeling filled his heart. He had thought countless times that he would have a child, but he had never thought that this child would be born by Meng Yao. What he could give to Fu Meng Yao was only the title of young madam of the Qi family, not his child. Chi-Che heavily threw the phone on the table. The sound startled the people behind him. He hurriedly turned his head and looked straight into He's bright, yet sorrowful eyes. He's hair on her forehead was slightly wet. Her exquisite and perfect face was so white that it was almost transparent. Her pale lips were tightly bitten by her teeth. Even if she bit a deep scar, there was no trace of blood. He's weak and fragile body seemed like it would disappear at any moment. Chi-Che felt a knife-like pain in his heart. He went forward and hugged He tightly in his arms without any explanation. His soft and cold body made him unconsciously frown. His heart ached so much that his thin lips tightly pursed as he said softly, "If you're not feeling well, then go to the hospital." "No need. I'm just a little tired. I want to go back and rest early," he said while shaking his head. He was in a daze and was still immersed in the shocking news just now. "All right, we'll go back now." The car for the return journey was picked up by Du Ju. Chi-Che held her and sat in the back seat. The entire journey was silent, and the atmosphere was terrifyingly silent. Du Ju glanced at the rearview mirror from time to time with a belly full of questions. He really couldn't understand why the atmosphere was different when the two of them were clearly fine when they left. Chi-Che's brows were tightly knitted. He helped Hee over and stared into her eyes as he said word by word, "You have nothing to ask me?" He was stunned for a moment before finally coming back to his senses. A bright smile appeared on his lips as he said coquettishly, "Che, congratulations on becoming a father." Du Ju stepped on the brakes and turned around excitedly to ask, "Miss Sue is pregnant? That's great." He had been out for the past few days and had delayed the update. Sorry, the updates would be updated in the next few days. He's face immediately flushed suspiciously, but she quickly shook her head and denied it. "The one who's pregnant is Fu Meng Yao." "Ah!" Du Ju scratched his head awkwardly, not daring to look at Chi-Che's livid expression. He started the car again in embarrassment. In his heart, he felt injustice for his boss. He really didn't expect that Fu Meng Yao's original plan would come true, and she would fall for it just this once. The CEO was already in a dilemma for Miss Sue, and now it was probably even more troublesome. "Other than congratulating me, you have nothing else to say?" Chi-Che approached her, his sharp eyes staring at her without blinking, with a domineering air. He was angry, and very angry. He could clearly feel it, but she didn't understand why he was angry. She didn't do anything wrong. Wasn't congratulating him the most appropriate thing to do? You. When do you plan to get married?" Mustering up her courage, He finally asked the question in her heart. What do you think? His handsome face raised a hair-raising smile. He subconsciously hid back. He didn't expect to be pulled into Chi-Che's hot embrace. A warm breath brushed past her pink ears, bringing waves of numbness. I don't know. She could not personally see him marry another woman in her lifetime. The smile on Chi-Che's lips became colder. He let go of her gently. A flash of pain flashed across his eyes. Su-hee-hee, you don't have a heart. He had done so much. How could she be so indifferent, Su-hee-hee? Are you heartless, or did you leave it with another man? No, my heart is just broken. She answered seriously. Chi-Che was amused by her answer. He did not expect the stubborn her to learn how to joke. Come back to Beijing with me. Su-hee-hee was stunned and didn't understand what he meant for a moment. He could only stare blankly at him, a trace of confusion flashing through his crystal-clear eyes. Chi-Che unconsciously inhaled harder. His languid and charming beauty was mixed with innocence and ambiguity. No man could refuse him, let alone Chi-Che, who had always had a soft spot for her. I want to prepare for President Cheng's grandson's surgery. I definitely won't be able to go for the time being. She definitely had to go to Beijing, but definitely not with this identity. She knew how important the noble families were. With her unbearable identity, what right did she have to enter the Qi family? Her mother was a cautionary example. She didn't want Ah-Che to walk the same path as her mother in the past for her own sake. Moreover, she didn't have much time left. There was no need to make everyone unhappy in her final moments. The only thing she could give Ah-Che was freedom and make him happy. Cheng's surgery. Chi-Che pondered for a moment and made a decision. I'll send someone to pick you up at Beijing Airport in a week's time. If you can't pick him up, the consequences will be very serious. He secretly made a face at him. This guy was too overbearing at times. After sending Su-hee home, Chi-Che and Du-ju rushed to the airport. A small military green plane had already stopped at a special parking spot at the airport. Looking at the slender figure standing in front of the plane, Chi-Che's brows furrowed even more tightly. It was already so late. He didn't expect his sister to come personally. Seeing Chi-Che appear, Chi-Ching hurriedly took a few steps forward and looked behind Chi-Che. He couldn't help but curl his lips in disdain when he didn't see the person he imagined. He said coldly, "What? You didn't bring Su-hee along?" Chi-Ching's personality had always been straightforward. She was used to summoning the wind and rain, and she never hid her dislike for a person. Chi-Che walked past her and boarded the plane, leaving Chi-Ching behind. His precious younger brother was angry. Chi-Ching blinked her long eyelashes and gave Du-ju a look. Du-ju, who received the hint, hurriedly said in a low voice, "CEO is in a bad mood. Don't blame me for not warning you when you bump into the muzzle of a gun." Chi-Ching nodded and asked in surprise, Su-hee made him angry? She had always been domineering and feared nothing but Chi-Che's anger. Since she was young, she had suffered countless losses from Chi-Che in secret. Every time she suffered a loss, the siblings would fight and cause both sides to be injured in the end. She still had to be taught a lesson by the old master. No matter how she looked at it, she was always the one who suffered a loss. Therefore, she was very curious about what kind of woman actually dared to make Ahche angry. Du-ju nodded with an unfathomable expression, which made Chi-Ching even more curious. Tell me what exactly happened. It's like this. It's a long story. Then make it short. I don't have time. She hated it the most when others kept her in suspense. Du-ju hurriedly said straightforwardly, "The president asked for a favor, but Miss Su didn't accept it." "What?" Chi-Ching roared in disbelief. His loud voice made it difficult for Chi-Che, who had already entered the plane, not to hear it. Is Su-hee's brain damaged, or has he eaten the courage of a leopard? Du-ju shrugged helplessly. He was also confused. After studying for so long, he still couldn't figure it out. But Miss, didn't all of you disagree? Miss Su's doing this is exactly what you want. Although you say so, someone actually dares to reject Ah-Che. This still makes me very unhappy. Du-ju's face was full of black lines. He finally understood what it meant to be arrogant and despotic, one in the open and one in the dark with the president. As expected of a biological brother and sister, The plane landed at the private airport of a certain high-ranking chief's sanatorium in Beijing. The heavily guarded sanatorium was immediately greeted by people. Although it was said to be a sanatorium, it was more of a well-equipped hospital. Not only was it equipped with the best medical facilities in the world, even the medical staff were all selected. Fifin's medical team could only be considered one of the many medical teams here. Anyone who could live here was famous and awe-inspiring. Money was not important, but power was important. The Chi family's old man lived on the 7th floor of the small red building. The usually solemn environment was unexpectedly lively today. Elder Chi sat in front of the hospital bed with a smile, while his daughter-in-law, Zhou Huaxiu, carefully peeled an apple for him. Fu Mingyao was shyly sitting on the sofa in front of the bed. It was exactly this side that Chi Che saw when he came in. He was very happy that his grandfather was in a good mood, but if that person was not he definitely would not accept it. The little rascal still knows to come back. Chi Che's mother, Zhou Huaxiu, put down her fruit knife and teased. "Mother," Chi Che softly greeted. Zhou Huaxiu saw that her son's expression wasn't right and immediately stood up in a dignified manner. She smiled at Fu Mingyao and said, "I'm Zhou Huaxiu. Mingyao, now that you're pregnant, you don't need to rest as well as before. I'll send someone to send you." Zhou Huaxiu, who was also from an aristocratic family, definitely had social skills that ordinary people couldn't compare to. "Thank you, Auntie." After smoothing out the creases in her long skirt, Fu Mingyao stood up elegantly and said politely to Elder Qi, "Grandfather, you rest well first. I'll come and see you tomorrow." When she turned around, she looked at Chi Che with reluctance. However, Chi Che grabbed her wrist. "Let's talk." After saying that, he pulled her away without any explanation. Zhou Huaxiu and Elder Qi were left dumbstruck. "Dad, what happened to Che?" Although Old Man Qi's hair was white and his face was full of wrinkles, his eyes, which had been accumulated over the years, were filled with wisdom that could see through everything. The physical pain and suffering could not break the old man's spirit, which was as firm as a mountain. He reached out and pressed the red button by the bed. Soon, a middle-aged military officer in military uniform knocked on the door and came in. "Old Chief, what are your orders? How is the task I asked you to do going?" Speaking of tasks, the middle-aged military officer looked at Zhou Huaxiu, who was sitting at the side, hesitantly. After receiving a nod from Old Man Qi, he said in a serious tone, "Su He grew up in an orphanage. His father's identity is unknown. His mother used to be a slightly famous celebrity, but after she retired from the entertainment industry, she completely disappeared. 5 years ago, Su He abandoned young master and went abroad. It was said that he took a fancy to a middle-aged, wealthy businessman who was even richer. This time, he returned because he was abandoned by a wealthy businessman." How outrageous! Zhou Huaxiu, who was sitting at the side, was so angry that her entire body was trembling. Her son rarely returned home these few years. She vaguely knew that the woman her son had always loved deeply was called Su He. She didn't expect that this Su He not only had a lowly background, he was even more blind. Old Master Qi couldn't help but glare at his daughter-in-law and said unhappily, "It's all because of you, a mother who dotes on him. Usually, if you put more effort into your son, would you cause such a scandal?" Facing the old master's criticism, Zhou Huaxiu could only lower her head in shame. Ever since Ache ran away from home because of the problem of the family inheritance, how could a mother like her dare to criticize him? Moreover, Ache had an idea since young. No one could change the things he decided. "You can leave first." The old man waved at the middle-aged officer. "Then, sir, you should rest more." After the middle-aged officer left, Old Man Qi looked very tired. He was already old. Although he was hospitalized with a myocardial infarction this time, the problem had not been solved. In addition, he had experienced too much war when he was young. His body had long been riddled with holes. Now, he was like a lamp at the end of its life. Looking at the old man, Zhou Huaxiu quietly wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and forced a smile. "Father, don't worry. I will definitely not let Su He in." It's fine if Lung Fei and AHC Chi don't agree. Now that Ming Yao is pregnant with Ah Che's child, it's something worth being happy about. Why don't we quickly settle their marriage? Grandfather Chi let out a long sigh of disappointment and said with regret, although Lung Fei is the adopted daughter of the Su family, she has always been doted on by the Su family. The Su family had the deepest foundation among the old brothers who came out together back then. The situation was changing, and among the many aristocratic families, the Su family was the one he valued the most. But Dad, Lung Fei is in the entertainment industry, so she is no longer qualified to be the Chi family's daughter-in-law. Besides, she is only the adopted daughter of the Su family. Actually, Zhou Huaishou was not satisfied with Lung Fei, she was just an adopted daughter. Even if she was the adopted daughter of the Su family, she could not escape the status of an adopted daughter. Compared to a real daughter of a prestigious family, she was still far from it. Su Guining is your future grandson-in-law. If you have a daughter-in-law of the Su family, won't you make those old comrades die of jealousy? Zhou Huaishou teased. That's true. The thing he was most proud of in his life was that he had decided on a child marriage with the Su family since he was young, and he had decided on the most outstanding son of heaven among the younger generation. Dad, you should rest first. We'll talk about the details when the father of the child comes back from his research at the grassroots level. Not wanting the old man to work too hard, Zhou Huaishou covered the old man with the quilt and left. At the door, she did not forget to instruct the doctors and nurses in detail. Just as she finished speaking, she happened to meet Qi Qing, who was walking towards her. When she saw her eldest daughter, she could not help but frown. Her well-maintained face was filled with a thin layer of anger. Perhaps it was really because she, as a mother, spoiled him too much. The siblings were each more unreliable than the other. Mom! Qi Qing felt his scalp go numb and quietly took a step back. His mother's personality was the most gentle, but when she was angry, she was definitely more powerful than his father and grandfather. Where's Ache? He's at the coffee shop across the street. Faced with his mother's anger, Qi Qing immediately tactfully betrayed his younger brother. Bring me there. Yes. In the elegant cafe, under the blurry lights, the piano player was playing a slow and heavy piano tune, Death and the Girl. The cafe would never play such a heavy tune, but Chi was mesmerized by it. This was because it was He's favorite tune. He had pestered him countless times to play it for her, and because of this, his piano skills improved by leaps and bounds. Death and the Girl. He rejected them from the bottom of his heart, but he could not overcome her coquetry. Every time he lost, he was willing to play for her without sleep or rest. He had never heard the melody that he used to be familiar with since he did not touch the piano 5 years ago. Chi listened attentively, but Fu Mingyao's face was pale. Her sharp nails pinched her palm until it was dripping with blood. The melody became more and more compact in the middle. The girl's panic and helplessness in the face of death was fully displayed. But at the end, it suddenly changed and became peaceful and peaceful. Even the gray color became warm, as if the girl had accepted everything to her. Death was nothing more than a long sleep. Chi-Che's heart felt as if it had been pricked by something. He could not help but clench the cup in his hand, his slender knuckles turning white. Stop playing. Fu Mingyao and Ming Yao threw the spoon in front of her on the ground. The suffocating atmosphere immediately disappeared. The hall manager hurriedly came up to apologize. Chi-Che impatiently waved his hand to signal the manager to leave. Since we're getting married, I don't want to hear anything related to Su He. She had gone crazy from jealousy countless times when she had played this song for Su He in the greenhouse on the rooftop. She thought that she would be able to ignore it as time passed, but the expression on Chi-Che's face just now made her almost go crazy. It was so far away, but the heart was at the ends of the earth. She had defeated Yin Chuqing and Lung Fei, but she still couldn't defeat that SL*T Su He. Getting married is fine. Get rid of the child. Retracting his earlier emotions, Chi-Che raised his eyes, deep and sharp. Fu Mingyao gasped and looked at him in disbelief. Che, do you know what you're saying? He's your child. A child who doesn't receive blessings shouldn't be born. Chi-Che's expression did not change. It was still the coldness that Fu Mingyao yearned for the most. However, at this moment, she suddenly realized that the intimacy between her and Che had long ceased to exist. She was not the fiancée that he held in his hands. When did it start? Was it the night that she plotted against him, or was it the birthday party? No. It should be the day that Su-He returned. From the day that Hao Yinfei said the 3 words Su-He for the first time in 5 years, everything had changed. However, there was no turning back for her. Love was like a battlefield. It was either one of them dying or the other dying. She would definitely make Su-He and Lung Chinga pay the price. Che, no matter what, I will not abort this child. Fu Mingyao held her still slim belly with a determined look on her face. She had given in too much over the past 5 years. In order to secure her position as the future young madam of the Qi family, she had put in too much effort and scheming. She had never refuted Che once. However, this child was her life-saving straw, the final salvation. If the child was gone, Fu Mingyao would be worthless. Thinking of Fu Juanqing's extreme strictness, a chill rose in Fu Mingyao's heart. If she couldn't marry Che in the end, her first daughter would become a joke in the entire city. Mingyao, I hope you won't regret your decision today. Mengji stood up, and Chi-Che left in large strides. He turned around swiftly, leaving behind a resolute back view. Fu Mingyao closed her eyes in pain, her silver teeth almost breaking. The relationship between her and Che was really getting weaker and weaker. Du Ju, who had been standing in the distance, came up to Fu Mingyao. Miss Fu, I hope you'll be careful. Do you think you have a right to tell me what to do? Fu Mingyao, who was feeling down, finally found an outlet to vent her frustrations. Meng Meng slammed her palm on the table and stared arrogantly at Du Ju. She sneered. Don't think that I don't know what you've done for Che. I'm warning you. You'd better behave yourself. If you interfere with Che and Su-He's matters, I'll definitely not let you off. Du Ju was so angry that his face turned pale. The image of the first daughter had been greatly reduced in his heart. No wonder the president was becoming colder and colder to her. How could she still have the confidence and generosity of the first daughter in front of him? You are also the one who caused you to lose our CEO in the future. If you didn't conspire with He Fifan to plot against the CEO, perhaps he would still have some sympathy for you. You were the one who ruined his previous glory. This was the first time Du Ju and Fu Mingyao had talked so much. This was his advice. Although the CEO didn't say anything, he would definitely do it. He hoped that Fu Mingyao would take care of herself. Madam has arranged for the person to send you outside. Goodbye. You. Fu Mingyao was so angry that her face turned green. Her chest heaved up and down violently. She glared at Du Ju and disappeared at the door. It took her a long time to slowly recover. Her well-manicured nails slowly scratched the latest Hermes handbag in her hand, leaving a few eye-catching scratches. Finally, she took out her phone and dialed a number. Butler Bai's cold voice came from the phone. Mississippi. Aunt Bai, fly to Beijing. I need your help. Okay, I'll first arrange to take a leave of absence from Mr. Fu and tell Mr. Fu about your pregnancy. Okay. After hanging up the phone, she turned around and happened to see Chi-Che's Bugatti swaggering away. She secretly swore in her heart that this man must belong to her, Fu Mingyao. In the car, Du Ju secretly glanced at Chi-Che and carefully said, President, Miss is chasing us with her car. Do you want to stop the car? They had already been chasing for 10 minutes. If they didn't stop the car and entered the second ring road, with Miss Personality, she would definitely cause a huge traffic jam in the city. Chi-Che glanced at the rearview mirror and unconsciously curled his lips into a faint smile as he nodded slightly. Zhou Huaxiu was furious from behind. If it wasn't for her status as a noble lady, she would have already snatched the steering wheel and driven it herself. Ah Qing, drive faster. The calm and composed Qi Qing glanced at the endless stream of cars outside and couldn't help but whistle. Unable to hide his excitement, he said, Mom, are you sure you want to drive faster? You're not allowed to whistle like a hooligan. Zhou Huaxio's face almost turned white with anger. The biggest failure in her life was her son's disobedience, while her daughter was like a bandit. Forget it, just keep driving at this speed. I don't want to see you grounded by your grandfather because you were racing in the city. This girl's various criminal records couldn't be finished even after 3 days and 3 nights because racing was grounded by her grandfather was even more common. Che, this rascal dare not stop the car. I'll ground him. Chi-Ching couldn't help but snicker. Mom, can you bear to? I'll ground him for a year just because of what he did. Speaking of this, Zhou Huaxio was extremely angry. If it wasn't for this pair of children, how could she not have enough confidence in front of her husband's father-in-law? As a daughter, she understood her mother's thoughts the best. Chi-Ching couldn't help but roll her eyes and tease. Mom, just be content. In the entire Beijing, be it the Su family, the He family, or the Tang family, which families, madam, is living such a comfortable life for you? Zhou Huaxio paused. What the rascal said was the truth. Ache's car has stopped. Finally, the 2 cars stopped at the shopping center around the corner. Before the cars could stop, Chi-Ching jumped out of the car and opened the door for Zhou Huaxio with a flattering smile. Old Buddha Yi, slow down. That kid can't run away. This girl, Zhou Huaxio, was so amused that she did not know whether to laugh or cry. The anger in her stomach immediately dissipated. She looked at her son, who got out of the car and walked over, trying her best to keep a straight face. Kid, you run fast enough? Chi-Ching teased, as if he wanted the world to be in chaos. You're a rabbit, right? Chi-Che raised his wrist to look at the time. I happen to be hungry. Let's go ahead and eat first. Zhou Huaxio nodded. This was not the place to talk. Let's go to one of the newly opened private restaurants. I've been rejected after inviting me a few times. I heard that he hired a palace chef from there who's pretty good at cooking. Du Ju stared. This young Master Tang's speed was too fast. Right, it had only been a few days since he returned to Beijing, another private restaurant. Chi-Che shook his head and laughed. Even his mother knew about his private restaurant. His advertising was pretty good. Tang Yi's private restaurant was located in a courtyard house. From the outside, it looked ordinary, but there was a different world inside. The Qing Palace was beautifully decorated, and there were cars parked everywhere in the quiet courtyard that were worth at least 1,000,000 yuan. To be able to open a restaurant in this place, money was definitely not enough. When everyone stepped into the simple and unadorned diamond-patterned wooden door, the sound of a Beijing movie was immediately heard. Wow, Annie has finally welcomed you here. Today, you being able to come here in person really gives me a lot of face. Even if you don't open a nightclub and open a restaurant, you still can't change your pimp nature. Chi-Che couldn't help but tease. Isn't that all thanks to you? Rolling his eyes at Chi-Che, Tang Yi warmly held Zhou Huaxio's arm and said with a smile, Auntie, please come in. I've arranged the best private room for you. If it wasn't for you personally coming here today, I definitely wouldn't have entertained Ache. You don't know, I'm almost angered to death by him. He's really too despicable. Seizing the opportunity to complain, Tang Yi continued to chatter nonstop. You said that I didn't let him off on that matter since we were young. Even when I went to city, it is studied privately. I risked my life to accompany a gentleman. In the end, he treated me like this and actually tripped me up behind my back. I've really let down my brothers. Do you know, all these years, the thing I regret the most is that I didn't get a diploma from Peking University. Can you pass the exam? Chi-Ching really couldn't bear to watch a certain someone's show, so he interjected and asked, Of course I can. Zhou Huaxio patted his hand earnestly. Ache is quite overboard. Don't worry, I'll definitely teach him a lesson this time. The few of them looked at each other and saw a hint of suspicion in each other's eyes. Tang Yi couldn't help but mutter. The only one who can teach him a lesson is Su Hehe. Chi-Che, this brat, had been considered the best of the worst since he was young, and Su Hehe was the nemesis of the best. Everyone thought that Su Hehe wasn't good enough for Chi-Che. In fact, he thought that only Su Hehe was good enough for Ache and was born to be his nemesis. After sending him to the private room, Tang Yi personally went to the kitchen to arrange the dishes. Du Ju stood guard outside, and there were only the 3 of them in the private room. Zhou Huatio sat in the main seat gracefully and elegantly. She put away the faint smile from before and looked at Chi-Che with a sharp gaze. Tell me about your relationship with Su Hehe. Chi-Che lit a cigarette for himself. His ink-black eyes were as deep as water. After a moment of silence, he said lightly, "It's very complicated. I can't explain it clearly." Zhou Huatio couldn't help but sigh in defeat. The older her son was, the more she couldn't do anything to him. From a young age, his thoughts were unfathomable and didn't matter to anyone. Now, he was even more unfathomable. As a mother, sometimes she really couldn't do anything to him. Then what kind of relationship do you want with Su Hehe? Since he asked this question, he should at least tell the truth. Che never disdained to lie. Mengdi took a puff of his cigarette. Chi-Che's cold eyes suddenly carried a trace of fanaticism. Her only man. Zhou Huatio and Chi-Ching were both shocked at the same time. Ever since they were young, Big Ache had always been cold and lustful. They had never seen such a moment when his emotions were exposed, and there was even a trace of ruthlessness in his determination to win. It was only because of a woman, an illegitimate daughter from a lowly background. Zhou Huatio narrowed her phoenix-like eyes dangerously. In that instant, her demeanor was surprisingly similar to Chi-Che's. It looked like she was going to have a good relationship with Su Hehe. Previously, regardless of whether it was Lung Fei or Fu Mingyao, she didn't really care. To her, the two of them were merely her son's women. Nothing more. It was time for the Chi family to need a young madam. Su Hehe made her feel danger for the first time. If she didn't handle it properly, it was very likely that she would lose her most precious son. Ache, Zhou Huatio said with a relaxed expression, Mom will definitely not agree to Su Hehe entering the house. Previously, you pushed Lung Fei and Fu Mingyao's engagement, but the family didn't agree either. Now that Fu Mingyao is pregnant, Grandpa finally nodded with much difficulty. He will definitely not allow anyone to disrupt the current balance. Mom, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. He was born into such a family and had been instilled with such an idea since he was young. He wasn't surprised. If he wanted to get he would have to lose everything. He was willing to lose everything, but he wasn't willing to return to his side. That's good. This way, I can explain things to your grandfather. He felt a huge weight lifted from his heart. He had an appetite when he saw the exquisite dishes being served by the waiters one after another. Recently, the old man had been seriously ill. Other than Qi Dushing, who couldn't come back from his research at the grassroots level, the entire family had been dragged to the brink of exhaustion. Today, they finally had an appetite and enjoyed a meal to their heart's content during this period. Tang Yi shamelessly refused to leave, and Zhou Huatio, who was not joking around, did not mention Su Hehe's matter. After coming out of the private restaurant, Chi-Che directly rejected Zhou Huatio's request to return home and returned to the apartment on the top floor of the New World building alone. Lying on the dark sofa, Chi-Che painfully closed his eyes. In the middle of the night, Su Hehe finally managed to fall asleep, but her phone rang and woke her up. She had almost no friends in City A, and there were only a few people who could call her at this time. Hello. Her voice carried an unconcealable languid charm. Chi-Che's heart skipped a beat. The unnoticeable heartstrings in his heart were gently tugged by something, and he felt a sweet bitterness. Immediately, he could not help but shake his head and laugh. No matter how many years had passed since he met he was still like the young kid from back then. The other party's silence caused Hehe's sleepiness to run away. She sat up from the bed and asked tentatively, Ache, is that you? After a long while, a deep voice came from inside. It's me. The cello-like mellow voice sounded exceptionally pleasant in the middle of the night. He could not help but be a little dazed as she listened attentively. For the past 5 years, she had been looking forward to receiving a call from Ache countless times in the middle of the night. At this moment, she actually felt so happy that she felt like she was about to die. Even the suffocating pain in her chest could be ignored. Ache. The deep voice and the joyful voice repeatedly called out Ache's name. If time could stop at this moment, she was willing to exchange everything. In the end, he did not know when she fell asleep. Right now, She was already so weak that she could not stay up late. Hee, wake up. Hao Yinfei was the one who called her to wake up today. It was not Aya who made her feel a little uncomfortable. Why are the dark circles under your eyes so serious? Hao Yinfei handed over the breakfast that she had bought and asked with a puzzled face, "Isn't this face too ugly?" The greasy fried dough sticks made Hee feel a wave of nausea that she could not suppress. She hurriedly jumped out of the bed and rushed into the bathroom. Hao Yinfei widened her eyes as she followed behind him. An idea flashed through her mind, and she asked tentatively, Hee, are you pregnant? The man on the other end of the phone had a light sleep. Even though he had not slept the entire night, he did not want to hang up the phone. It was only when he heard Hao Yinfei's voice on the phone that he closed his eyes tiredly. In the end, it was less than 3 minutes this explosive question made him suddenly open his sharp eyes. His eyes were clear, and there was still a trace of confusion in them. His burning and threatening gaze carried a shocking shock. After lying on the toilet and retching, he took a glass of water and rinsed her mouth before leaning weakly against the door. She calmly said, "It's already been 7 weeks." "What?" Hao Yinfei's surprise scream made he frown slightly. The man on the other end of the phone stood up from the sofa, in shock. He didn't even know that the phone in his hand had fallen to the ground. This is simply too good. Too good. Hao Yinfei was so excited that she cried. She hugged He and laughed and jumped. Does the president know? Hao Yinfei only thought of this question after she calmed down. He shook her head. "I'm actually the first to know." You're too kind. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. She already knew about it when she was at Caesar's palace last time. She wanted to tell Che personally, but she didn't expect to get the news of Fu Mingyao's pregnancy from Che's phone before she could even open her mouth. "Mother, do you want to walk the same path with Fu Mingyao back then? Call the president now and tell him the good news." Hao Yinfei hurriedly handed over her phone. Unexpectedly, he reached out and refused. Fei, you must keep it a secret from me. I can't tell anyone about my pregnancy." Why? Hao Yinfei was confused. "No reason. Remember, you can't even tell Lung Yinfeng," she said solemnly. At the mention of Lung Yinfeng, Hao Yinfei was full of anger. She had completely given up on Lung Yinfeng, but this guy came to her for no reason. He was simply an eyesore. "Since you don't want me to tell you, I won't." The man on the other end of the phone frowned. He suddenly regretted transferring Hao Yinfei to Africa. It was too merciful of him. He should have transferred her directly to Mars. "Thank you, Fei." He smiled slightly. On the autumn morning, it was as dazzling and unreal as fireworks, as if it was fleeting. Hao Yinfei subconsciously hugged her tightly, and her heart panicked. You must not hide anything from me." She did not know what had happened recently, but every time she saw she felt an inexplicable panic in her heart. He hugged her back and nodded with a smile. "No, definitely not." A voice in her heart kept reminding her, "Suhi, if you're so good at lying, why don't you go act in a movie?" That's right, she should have entered the entertainment industry like her mother. That way, she might not have met Che. After eating the porridge that Aya personally cooked in the morning, Hao Yinfei went out with Hao Yinfei. Hao Yinfei got off the car at Zifeng Building and happened to meet Lung Yinfeng and Yin Chuqing, who got off at the same time. The two of them were slightly stunned. "Isn't this our genius doctor? Why don't you go in and have a seat?" Yin Chuqing's sharp voice was heard, attracting the eyes of the passers-by. Some people even stopped to watch curiously. Recently, the whole city had been buzzing with rumors about the genius doctor. Even the elite white-collar workers in the city had heard about it. "Yin Chuqing, would it kill you to say less?" Hao Yinfei snorted disdainfully and glanced at Lung Yinfeng, who was in the same line of work, and her expression became even uglier. "Hao Yinfei, you're the public relations director of Qi International. You can be a lapdog if you want to. I don't understand why you want to be a lapdog for an illegitimate daughter." Yin Chuqing sarcastically said Hao Yinfei was so angry that she wanted to rush up and give her a slap, but Sui pulled her back. What are you doing? You want me to teach her a good lesson on what is polite and what is so great about being a senior sister?" He didn't let go of her because her strength wasn't as exquisite as her forehead, which was covered in fine beads of sweat. Fei, calm down. If you quarrel with her, you won't feel comfortable working in the company anymore. She pointed at your nose and scolded you. Aren't you angry? Hao Yinfei said in a bad mood. You want me to teach her a good lesson and let her know how powerful Hao Yinfei, am? Fei, He's voice became weaker and weaker, and her vision turned black. She held onto her arm tightly and refused to let go. However, Yin Chuqing was not the kind of person who would give in. She crossed her arms and raised her chin, looking at the two of them with disdain. Let's go in. Lung Yinfeng could not stand the eyes of the passers-by, and his face was as black as charcoal. No matter what, they were influential figures in Zifeng building. Every word and action represented the image of the Qi group. It was really damaging to their identity to quarrel on the street without caring about their status. Yin Chuqing completely ignored Lung Yunfeng's words. She glared at Su He and said with extreme disdain, I don't care what so-called genius doctor you are, but I warn you, it's best that you don't appear in Zifeng building. Ever since the last incident, they had completely turned from former schoolmates into enemies. Su He's smile was bitter. She knew that Senior Yin had never liked her and secretly regarded her as a rival, but she had never known that Senior Yin would hate her so much. Fei, let's go. He leaned weakly on Hao Yinfei's body. Her vision turned black, and she suddenly fainted. Fortunately, Lung Yinfeng was quick enough to hold her in his arms. Her tall figure was actually so light that it was frightening. Lung Yinfeng unconsciously frowned. During this period of time, everyone in the circle knew that Fifan had been sitting alone in the bar until late at night. The reason for chasing him was still because of Su He. He had never seen the arrogant young master. He's so guilty that he did not dare to appear in front of her. Now he was also confused. He even began to doubt whether Su He, who was with the middle-aged wealthy businessman 5 years ago, was the Su He in front of him. If he knew her now, he definitely would not believe that she was alone. Hao Yinfei immediately panicked. She glared fiercely at Yin Chuqing and Lung Yinfeng before sending He to the hospital. Yin Chuqing couldn't help but shiver. It was only now that she realized that she had been too impulsive just now. Thinking of Chi-Che's punishment for her, she couldn't help but feel a lingering fear in her heart. After hesitating for a moment, she followed him. Outside the emergency room of the first hospital, President Chung was so angry that he blew his beard and glared. He pointed at the few people in front of him and said bitterly, I say that the few of you are too worried. As the president of a university's medical school, I can be considered your teacher, right? The few of them nodded silently. President Chung rolled up his sleeves and scolded them more and more. Feeling more and more frustrated, do all of you take me, your teacher? Seriously, you clearly know that the day after tomorrow is my grandson's surgery, yet all of you are able to make he pass out from anger. Chuqing, what do you want me to say about you? You are really capable. Tomorrow, I will call all of you teachers. All of you have grown up. I didn't say anything at all. She blamed herself for being too weak. Yin Chuqing was really displeased with Su He's weakness. She had not even said anything before she passed out. Could it be that she was faking it? You? President Chung was so angry that he almost fainted. He's heart was already severely exhausted and could stop beating at any time. Yet these people were still so persistent. Fifan, who was wearing a white coat, rushed over with Doug, interrupting President Cheng's anger. Teacher, please calm down. Everything will be fine. There had never been a moment when he didn't feel the deepest hatred for the fox. The fox. In his heart, he was extremely worried. I'm so angry with all of you. President Chung was tired after scolding them for a long time. He simply rested on the bench at the side. You guys are really too much. Doug couldn't help but scream. He looked at the crowd in disbelief and said in shock, Professor Angus treats Helen like a treasure. The whole Hopkins Hospital treats Helen like a treasure. How come all of you in China are so vicious? She's just a simple girl. Why aren't you willing to forgive her a little? After a month of hard training, he had spoken the most fluent and straightforward words in Chinese so far. What he had seen and heard in the hospital during this period of time really made him feel disappointed. Helen had actually suffered so much injustice in China and suffered so much pressure. No one would believe it, even if he told them back in the United States. Fifin's face instantly turned as red as a pig's liver. He turned around awkwardly. It was clear that Doug had also scolded him. It was fine to scold him, but he had to admit that Doug had scolded him well. Hao Yinfei had been holding the white phone in her hand as she paced back and forth anxiously. She shook her head and sighed at times. At this time, she heard Doug's words and glanced at the crowd. You're right. In the end, it's because they're too ignorant. Everyone had long experienced Hao Yinfei's sharp tongue over the past few years, so no one paid attention to her. To He Fifin, the one who was powerful was not Hao Yinfei, but Su Hehe. Whether she did it on purpose or not, the public disclosure of her identity this time was a fatal blow to him. If she had revealed her identity earlier, she might not have become a barrier in his heart that he could not get over. No one would forgive him for stepping on his most admired idol. He was indeed very ignorant. Su Hehe was not only a barrier that Che could not get over, but also a barrier in He Fifin's heart that he could not get over. Tell me what exactly is going on. Retracting his emotions, He Fifin's eyes behind the golden frames of his glasses swept across the middle-aged man sharply, carrying an irresistible, domineering air. It's like this. Lung Yinfeng roughly recounted what happened in the morning. His few words made Doug stomp his feet a few times, and he was so angry that he cried out loudly from the side. Hearing Lung Yunfeng's simple explanation, He Fifin was also unhappy. He did not expect that with Yin Chuqing's arrogance, she would actually do such a ridiculous thing. Hao Yinfei also followed suit. He Fifin snorted coldly. As an old classmate for many years, he cannot help but worry for Yin Chuqing. Chuqing is getting more and more ridiculous. Everyone knew that Su He was the person at the heart of Chi Che. He was the most untouchable person. Even Fu Mengyao avoided him, but she actually repeatedly offended him. It seemed that no one could protect her this time. Lung Yinfeng was silent. He Fifin was right. Even he was probably involved. It was true that he and Chi Che had been friends for many years, but if Chi Che really went crazy, he would be a little worried. Hao Yinfei, who had been clutching her phone, finally took a deep breath and dialed Chi Che's private number. Hello, I'm Chi Che. A deep, cello-like voice came from the phone. The others couldn't hear it clearly, but the familiar tone made everyone quiet down. On the other end of the phone, Chi Che was in a video conference. On the huge screen, the elites of the Chi Group's international financial investment company appeared. After handing the phone to Du Ju and indicating for him to answer it, Chi Che turned his gaze back from a young age and patiently repeated what he had just said. Transfer all the shares of the first hospital under my name to Su He. After he said that, his thin lips curved into a faint smile as he looked at Manager Qian and reminded him, I don't want to repeat myself a third time. Chi Che, are you crazy? Manager Qian stood up from his seat. Ever since he bought the first hospital and ruined his title as the #1 venture capitalist gold hand, he had been holding back a bellyful of anger. What the F***CK did he, Chi Che, want to do today? His slender fingers tapped lightly on the rosewood table in front of him. Chi Che raised his brows and said, Qianjin, do you want to die a uglier death? No. Manager Qian's handsome face instantly fell. But can you not call me Qian Wang Jin? Although his biggest hobby was to collect all kinds of gold products. However, such a Philistin name really didn't fit his dashing image. Just do as I say. The procedures must be completed in 3 days. His fan-like thick eyelashes covered his deep ink-black eyes, concealing the joy that came from his heart. He didn't have time to go to the hospital in the morning, so he immediately called this meeting. He hoped that he would like this gift. President, something bad happened. Du Ju, who was on the phone outside, rushed in. Miss Su fainted and was admitted to the hospital this morning. Chi Che was stunned. He grabbed Du Ju's collar and said fiercely, Tell me clearly what happened. Hao Yinfei called just now and said that Miss Su is still in the emergency room. Arrange a plane and go back to city immediately. What about the old man? He's out of danger. He's fine for the time being. The two of them left the meeting room in a hurry. Manager Chien was the only one left with his jaw dropped and could not close it for a long time. On the way to the airport, Chi-Che listened to Hao Lianfei's explanation over the phone. His handsome, straight eyebrows were almost furrowed into a small hill. His chest was throbbing with pain for no reason, and the anger in his eyes seemed to be burning with a fiery flame. President, it's precisely because you've always been too cold to Miss Sue that some people have the guts to bully her. Du Ju felt injustice for Su He. Chi-Che's eyes darkened even more. The corridor outside the emergency room fell into silence. Ordinary patients and medical staff would not enter the advanced VIP ward without permission. Yin Shuqing was in no mood to stay any longer. She dragged Lung Yinfeng away. Before she left, she glanced at Hao Lianfei before she moved her feet. It was almost noon when the automatic door of the emergency room finally opened. The attending physician, who was sweating profusely, appeared at the door, causing He Feifan and Doug to look at each other in surprise. Department Director Zhao. Why was the person in the emergency room the department director of the cardiothoracic surgery department of the first hospital? Department Director Zhao did not have the time to care about the surprise of the two of them. He said to President Chung, "Hurry up and come in. I have something to discuss with you." The last time Suhi was hospitalized, he was in charge of it. Even after receiving President Cheng's important advice, he did not dare to show in front of others. He could only call President Chung in. Actually, President Chung was also very impatient waiting outside. He had been wondering why he had not come out for such a long time, since he was not undergoing surgery. Suhi is already 7 weeks pregnant. This child must be removed immediately, or else her life will be taken at any time. It was precisely because Suhi was unwilling to cooperate that the delay was so long. President Chung was stunned. He looked at the computer monitor in shock until he saw the steady heartbeat of the fetus before he accepted the truth. Director Zhao was telling the truth, but when she saw he, who had just woken up from his coma, smiling weakly at her, President Chung felt that she could not say anything about removing the child. "President Chung, I'm sorry for troubling you." Sui's expression was calm. She had already expected what would happen today. Other than the child's appearance, which caught her off guard, she knew everything else, including the fact that she simply didn't have the ability to give birth to this child. You knew about it long ago. She had never seen a child more foolish than her. Yes. Does Chi-Che know? He's expression darkened a little as she shook her head weakly. Ah-Che still didn't know, and she didn't want Ah-Che to know that he already had a child. Fu Mingyao would definitely give birth to a healthy baby for him. Su He did not have the right. "President Chung, you must not tell Ah-Che." President Chung rejected decisively. "You hide everything from Chi-Che. Have you ever thought about how he feels? He already has a child. Fu Mingyao is pregnant." President Chung paused. He could not bring himself to say anything. He's probably right. This child could not be kept at all. It was better to pretend that he had never been here. "I'll arrange for the surgery now. Get rid of the child." Director Zhao could not help but nod at the side. He looked at he worriedly and said, "Dr. Helen, you're the most outstanding doctor. You should know your body the best. You can't keep this child, or you'll die at any moment." He held her flat abdomen with a sad expression. She used her heart to feel the life that was being nurtured here. Tears fell like rain from the bottom of her heart. Her heart, which was covered with scars, was already dripping with blood. "President Chung, what can I do if I can't bear to do it?" When she was young, she had grown up in an orphanage with a lot of pain. She had hated her mother countless times for bringing her into this world. At this moment, she could understand her mother's helplessness at that time. "Mother, I miss you so much." But President Chung was still making his final effort. Director Zhao, however, pushed the thick and heavy eyes on the bridge of his nose and calmly analyzed, "Let's not talk about your body not being able to last until the end. Even if there is a miracle and you are able to safely give birth to him, he will still die due to his congenital deficiency. You have to think about it carefully." "Let me think about it. I can't abort the child now either." Otherwise, I won't be able to perform Tian Chang Cheng's surgery again. Tomorrow, all the members of medical team Y will be present. Su He's words hit President Cheng's soft spot. His grandson's life could not be waited for. In the end, Su He rejected President Cheng's good intention of asking her to stay in the hospital for observation. He insisted on taking the elevator from the back door and leaving. She knew her body better than anyone else. If she could drag it out for a moment, it would be a moment. Even if she had to die, she did not want to die in the cold hospital bed. She missed her mother. This time, she had to bring her mother away. When she left the hospital, it was unknown who had revealed that the genius doctor had fainted in the Zifeng building. The news of the Qi Corporation's president rushing over quickly caused the entire hospital to be surrounded. It took a lot of effort to squeeze out. When they came out, they accidentally stepped on a young man. "I'm sorry. Are you all right?" The young man was only 14 or 15 years old. He was fair and delicate, and he had a sickly look that could not be seen in the sun all year round. His soft black hair reflected his bright black eyes, and it was very pitiful. "I'm fine." The young man waved his hand carelessly and looked inside from time to time. "It's nothing." The youth waved his hand carelessly and looked inside from time to time. He's curiosity was also aroused. He even forgot about calling Hao Lianfei to call her out. He followed the youth and looked inside. Apart from a large group of reporters and security guards, there didn't seem to be anything special. Just now, Chi-Che went in. He's really handsome, cool, and stylish. The youth had a face full of admiration. "I admire Chi-Che the most. Grandfather said that as long as I have his surgery this time, I can be like Brother Chi-Che." Su He's entire body stiffened. Che really came? He stood there in a daze as he watched. Even the noise around him seemed to have disappeared. It was as if the entire space had come to a standstill. He lifted his feet and looked far ahead. His handsome and extraordinary figure and footsteps were like the wind, getting further and further away. Finally, he disappeared. Su He suddenly staggered as if he had lost his strength. Fortunately, he was supported by the youth. "Big sister, my name is Chung Chung. What's your name?" The youth supported her and smiled shyly at her. His pale face had a trace of a suspicious blush. Chung Chung. The familiar name pulled her thoughts back. She looked at the young man and suddenly understood. "So it's Chung Chung. My name is Su He. I've finally met you. You're the doctor who performed the surgery for me." Chung Chung was overjoyed. "Grandfather said that you're very good at surgery. This surgery will definitely be successful, right?" He nodded firmly. She felt the same way and liked Chung Chung even more. "Aren't you afraid?" "I'm not afraid. As long as I'm alive, I'm not afraid of anything." Perhaps it was because he grew up in the hospital, the young man looked very sensible. "But I'm actually also worried. Otherwise, I wouldn't have secretly come out of the hospital to relax." He made a face secretly. The naive young man could not see the nervousness before the surgery at all. He was also affected by the ease and took the initiative to invite Chung Chung for a meal. The young man nodded happily. His diet had always been personally arranged by his grandfather. It was nutritious but too bland. "Sister He, what delicious food should we eat?" "It's up to you." "Really?" Chung Cheng's eyes lit up. "Then let's eat hot pot." A hot pot? She couldn't eat spicy food either. "I like spicy food the most, but Grandpa never let me eat it." Looking at the young man's shining eyes, Su He could only nod. In the end, the two of them came to the Chongqing Hot Pot City in front of the hospital. The Mandarin duck pot was paired with a unique sauce, and Chung Chung ate to his heart's content. "Sister He." The young man stopped his chopsticks and looked at her seriously. Su He carefully prepared vegetables, mushrooms, and various soy products for him. Hearing this, he nervously put down his chopsticks and quickly tested the temperature of his forehead. He was relieved when he found nothing abnormal. Chung Chung was amused by He's nervousness and said happily, "It's good to know Sister He. I've never eaten hot pot since I was young. Today is my first time. It's really delicious." Hearing this, Sui's eyes felt sour and uncomfortable. She knew better than anyone that she had been tormented by illness since she was young and could not go to school or play around. Chung Chung was lucky to have President Cheng's meticulous and thoughtful care, but her misfortune was caused by Fu Juanqing alone. If he had not imprisoned his mother, perhaps her childhood would have been the same as Chung Cheng's. The sensitive youth immediately noticed that something was wrong with He. He stood helplessly in front of He and kept scratching his head and apologizing. Sister He, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you sad. Don't worry. When I successfully grow up after the surgery, I will definitely marry you and take care of you for the rest of your life. His bright eyes were extremely serious. He could not help but laugh at his teasing. He smiled and shook his head repeatedly. He felt that the youth was too cute. He secretly swore in his heart that he must save Chung Chung. Chung Cheng's eyes turned red with anxiety when he did not get an answer from He. Sister, you don't like me? I do. Then why didn't you agree? He paused in his hand that was picking up the chopsticks again. He was stunned for a long time before he came back to his senses. He said casually, if Sister can wait until that day, Sister will agree to you, okay? Yeah, that's great. The naive young man did not have time to think about the deeper meaning in He's words. He was so happy that he almost jumped up, so he did not dare to let Ching eat too many spicy and greasy things. He probably only ate 30% of his fill before he paid the bill and left. He only took a taxi to leave after he sent Chung Chung to the hospital entrance. Villa number 70 by the Sunset Lake. The taxi driver was stunned. He was also very surprised. It was the same driver from last time. Miss, the phone in the pocket of your coat has been vibrating. The driver kindly reminded her while waiting for the car at the traffic light. Thank you. He took out the phone with a trembling hand and held it in his palm. The phone vibrated crazily with a clear and numb touch, but her heart was bleeding. Just a layer of coat separated her from the phone, but her touch was already so dull. Miss, aren't you going to pick up the phone? The driver looked at her strangely. Only then did he look at his phone dully. There were more than 100 missed calls. At this moment, Chi-Che's 2 words were still flashing nonstop. He swiped the answer button, and Chi-Che's exasperated voice came from the other end. Su-Hee, where did you run off to? Who allowed you to run around? Tell me where you are, and I'll go pick you up immediately. I have a private matter to settle, and I'll be back tonight. The driver in the front seat felt indignant after hanging up the phone decisively. Miss, your boyfriend seems to really care about you. It's normal for couples to quarrel. You can't just disappear. You don't understand. She couldn't tell Ache's mother about it right now. The atmosphere in the top floor of the first hospital's office suddenly dropped to freezing point. The entire space was so oppressive that it made people feel suffocated. Chi-Che stood in front of the glass curtain like a demon. Hao Yinfei, who was following behind him, couldn't help but tremble in the bottom of her heart. However, she couldn't help but gloat. President, he hung up on you just now. He was good. As expected of her, Hao Yinfei's best friend, you even dare to hang up on Chi-Che. You're really awesome. Turning his head and giving her a cold glance, Chi-Che said gloomily, do you also miss the days in Africa? No. Hao Yinfei shook her head and scolded Chi-Che in her heart for being too black-bellied. These days, when I'm not in the company, your life is really too comfortable. No, President, Hao Yinfei wailed incessantly. She regretted saying such a mean thing and making a fool of Chi-Che. Chi-Che's cold eyes were tinged with a smile. Perhaps it was because he loved his neighbor, but he was always more patient with Hao Yinfei. Every time he thought of how she was he's only good friend, he couldn't say some harsh words. Hao Yinfei. Chi-Che suddenly called her name solemnly. Hao Yinfei was stunned. Chi-Che had never called her name in such a solemn tone before. Unconsciously turning the ring on his left middle finger, Chi-Che's lips revealed a gloomy smile. What do you think I should do if my pet gets lost? Hao Yinfei was shocked and awkwardly held her forehead. In fact, Chi-Che didn't wait for her answer. He instructed Du Ju, withdraw everyone and stop investigating. We're going to the Sunset Lake now.